Hello, Twitch and YouTube. And Slayer back. Um, so yeah, before I get to playing today, I've mentioned I'm wanting to do some developer feedback. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about scaling. So I've been thinking about like if I were to write on like a forum or write to the developers in general or want to talk about like major concerns or positives or whatnot, what I'd write about because there's so much to this game. Um, but for me, Trials of Fire probably the biggest thing that needs. Let me turn down this volume. The biggest thing that needs refining right now, uh, aside from the consistency of volume when I open it, is uh, is scaling. The scaling in this game is pretty wonky. Not going to lie. I think like the way the game is constructed and kind of the core gameplay loop and um, like the theme and a lot of the aesthetics and stuff is like really great. And I think what the devs have going, what Wetboy has going in Trails of Fire is very solid and can go places. Um, but right now, the scaling in the game, especially at high difficulties, is a bit wonky just because it doesn't really exist past the very early levels. And I kind of wanted to talk about that and why the scaling in this game is very inconsistent, and I think probably the biggest point of frustration reasons why why I might have a hard time playing this game like a lot. I mean, I do play it a lot, but like to go just talk briefly about my kind of design philosophy for most games. I came up with this little hypothetical situation, but the way like all games, especially strategy games, is a series of choices, and I just like kind of come up with like our random game here as like if you have a game and say it's like consists of like 5 consecutive choices, so you have 25 strategies. Um, the ideal game would make it so that every decision that the player makes is valuable to some extent, and in particular for me, the ideal of difficulty pretty much directly maps to how many decisions you have to get correct to win the run. Um, and the reason why I conceptualize it like this is that if you think about it as a series of decisions that you have to make throughout a given run or a given game, um, and you want to talk about difficulty and impact, uh, this type of scaling or this conception of scaling, in my opinion, is like probably super healthy. And the reason for that is kind of multifold. A It means that a player can win every game. It is conceivable. The player has impact at every decision at every point in the game. It's possible to win every game. Three, the difficulty increases the variety of the game because if you have to make every decision correctly, but every decision is impactful, that means as you get up higher difficulty, the places the game is going to take you is going to expand, right? You can't just force one strategy or take the same option every time. It doesn't. It if you conceptualize it as like several equivalent decisions, and you balance the game around that, and you make it so that the total number of decisions you have to make correctly increases, you're going to get something where you're playing a game with high variety, um, but you always have high impact, and it's difficult because it's based entirely off of your skill, um, and not some preconceived notions. And when games become toxic or like really annoying is when like if you imagine this like 5 decisions with 25 paths is when there is no path to victory, or the paths to victories are always through a certain particular set of decisions, or a decision doesn't matter, right? You always have to do something, or you never have to consider anything. That just ends up like kind of tunneling a game, tunneling out a lot of strategies, makes it stale, um, and doesn't really exploit all the complexity you've added to it. And so this is kind of what I'm striving for with my recommendations and what I'm talking about and looking for. I'm not trying to make it so that any given thing is overpowered. The idea is that everything has its place in the given situation, and nothing has its place outside of its given situation. Um, so, I mean, that's just a general overarching philosophy that I'm looking for. So let's get on to scaling. So in this game, your comp has to scale. This is not a game where you can be static in your power level. The way the game scales right now is that non-boss fights have a kind of linear. Well, they have an on-paper linear, in effect, quadratic scaling to them. And what I mean by that is basically the number of enemies you face in each combat increases fairly linearly at certain thresholds. You'll start off facing 2 to 3, and then it'll get to facing 3 to 4, depending on the enemy type, then to 4 to 5, and then 5 to 6, etc. And that's based on what the dev said, that's based off of day, and then major objective checkpoints, the major objectives adding 7 days to it. That seems fairly accurate. There's a few things that don't seem to show up until after. Like Furies, I've never seen a Fury encounter happen until after the second boss in either set of runs, and then they happen very reliably. The pool of things it seems to draw on seems to be like there seems to be a finite pool, and then like after you encounter something, the probability that you encounter again draw like there seems to be like a pseudo randomness to the pool, and certain events pop up a lot more. Like honing almost always pops up, and if you visit every settlement you see on the map, you will typically hit honing before. I've almost always hit it before the first. It almost always appears en route before the first boss fight. And there's several things like that. Like the Arcanist almost always shows up. The Blacksmith almost always shows up. Now then again, I am looking for those things, but it's not like some of the environmental events where you're based on the environment. But regardless, enemies, especially the wandering ones, generally scale. The numbers scale linearly, and that means they scale effectively quadratically. Because if you're able to like deal a certain amount of damage over time, if you talk about enemy scaling, I've talked a little bit about this before, but if you're facing 3 enemies that deal 5 damage a turn, unfortunately not unreasonable in Cat 10, they're going to do, and you take them out 2 times. You can take out 1 a turn. They're going to do 15. Damage dealt is 15 plus 10 plus 5 equals 30. Now, if you have 4 enemies, it's going to be damage dealt is 20 plus 15 plus 10 plus 5 equals 50, right? 5 enemies. I mean, you can, if you know your quadratics, you'll know this will go up to, this should go up to plus 3. Yeah, plus 30 is going to be 80. 6 enemies. It's going to be plus 4 is 120, etc. So, they scale approximately quadratically, assuming the players have constant power level, which is really scary because, and we'll address that with the first thing about how players scale with HP, is that players can't keep up with that if they're not also scaling at a similar rate. Um, and unfortunately, right now, players don't scale this fast. They scale very quickly early game, but they very quickly plateau. It's very much like a asymptotic curve right now. Uh, so, um, and we'll talk about that. So, the first, and so yeah, so the first and major way players scale is with card quality, and I'm going to bundle this into burst. Okay, so if you're facing enemies, the first and best way to essentially improve your effective like damage per turn and your ability to deal with enemies is simply to have better cards. Right now, you start off with 11 cards. Typically, 9 of which are pretty bad. I've gone ahead and let me pull this up for sakes because I've been working on this a little bit. Yeah, there you are. My card ratings, most of which I consider pretty bad. It really depends on the. I just turned off chat. Let me get chat. Feel free to come in chat. By the way, I am happy to discuss this in person. But yeah, currently, most cards you start off with are pretty bad, which makes sense, right? But and then you are rapidly kind of adding cards to the deck to improve the ratio of good cards to bad cards. Now, it's written that based on how this game's resources work, that very early burst of card quality increase doesn't occur very long because you have to spend cards to cast your other cards, and that means that you're only casting, well, if most cards cost about 2 willpower, which is kind of the case, especially for the better ones, on average, you're only able to cast 3 cards, often only you're casting around 3 cards a turn. And so with a little bit of redundancy, that means once your deck is about 40% good cards, and we'll talk about card like what is a like general card in a second. But once you're at 40% good cards, the actual replacement doesn't really increase the power level that much. It will increase the versatility of the deck. And so like the effective power could be a little bit better because you can deal with more situations more precisely, and get a little extra like what I'll call synergy benefit. But for the most part, your absolute power level of your deck doesn't get much stronger in terms of raw card power after you hit like a 40% ratio. So yeah, at about 40 to 50% good cards, card quality stops scaling. And so you start off at 2 out of 11, if I recall correctly, which is about 18%, with each card adding about 8% or so. So you hit this cap pretty quickly, right? You like your first 3 levels, you replace 1, which pushes you to like 27% or so. And then once you get a few items on each of your characters, you hit that kind of 40 threshold. Like by the time you are level 2 on all your characters and have 3 uncommon items, you pretty much or hit this. So like yeah. So yeah, this occurs at about level 1 to level 2 to 3. Yeah, about level 2 and like 3 to 4 uncommons. Is where you start getting where you've replaced your deck enough so that you're consistently casting like uncommon level quality power cards every turn. And this leads to the other thing is that cards don't get much better past uncommon quality. And yeah, this is a pretty big deal. Right now, so heroics are kind of an attempt to address this a little bit, but yeah, they're not. They don't exactly cut the mustard in terms of what you're looking for with higher card quality. And so we're going to talk about this in a hot second, but the next thing, but kind of very related to this, and we're going to mention first is burst. So one of the best ways to scale down encounters is to kill enemies quickly, right? Like there's the best way to turn a 4-enemy fight, make a 4-enemy fight easier is to make it a 3-enemy fight. And the best way to do that is with burst, right? If you can very quickly burst down one of the enemies, particularly an archer or something like that, it makes the fight a lot easier. And so when you're talking about card quality, very often you're talking about like the metric of a good quality by itself card is a card that can impact the fight very early and get you an advantage to essentially get you ahead of the curve and get that high level fight down to like you get a fight manageable. Burst, aka fast cards. And the thing about this game is that there's not many fast cards in the game, or there's a very small proportions. And especially when we're talking about cards that are kind of relegated to higher quality stuff, especially stuff you find on rares and epics, right? In theory, the heroics are supposed to be your fast one-use cards, because you can only use them once. We don't actually have that many tools for engaging in burst or like managing fights super well. So yeah, if we take a little wander over to heroics, we can just use the happy new button. This is kind of fun, by the way. Most heroics are not stuff that are that fast, right? I've always said the criterion for heroics: win the fight when you cast them, be good on their own, or be good at the very specific point, which is basically all kind of. And in the strategic framework, it's not even good to be like good just cast on its own, like high quality. You actually, like, for the heroic investment of you investing resources into an epic or legendary tier item, because in the general stream of a game, right, like in a given battle, it may be okay for you to, in choosing between the caster heroic and an action card, for a heroic to just be slightly better in most situations, like in terms of like the mechanics of how they work. But because they only ever show up on high quality equipment, and because you have to put a lot of investment into these, from a strategic standpoint, heroics have to be notably better than actions. It's not just good for them to be just a little bit better. They have to fundamentally change how you play the game. In general, cards have to change how you fundamentally play the game. And right now, there's not that many cards that are, like, a good proportion of these aren't fast out of the gate cards that are going to give you tons of impact, right? The only ones I really think of are you have Sunfire, Multi-Shot, Immolate, Focus Beam, and Crush, and Execute to a degree. Like, some of these are okay. Like, Execute, Life Siphon, and Impenetrable Wall in situations can be. But that's it. Out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 16, 21 heroics we have, Um, only one, two, three, four of them reliably are fast, and then another three of them are sometimes fast. So, like, only a third can be classified as something that you actually want as a heroic consistently. Um, or that something that behaves in terms of like this one shot thing that's supposed to be good on its own actually exists, right? Um, so, and outside of that, the actions don't really get better. There's not very many cards that are just high impact on their own. Um, Fireball's pretty much the only one that comes to mind that, like, at the beginning of the fight, I can throw this out and do a ton of damage. Um, and like stabilize a fight. Fireball and Earth Grasp, both of which synergize on the Elementalist and exist on the Elementalist. And so there's very few things that do it outside of those two cards. The headshot is also fast, and if you notice, I take headshots all the time. Mighty Blow kind of does it, but it's melee, so it's worse. But yeah, there's very little long range burst, very little, and there's very little things that like the defensive stuff. There's no like start of the fight AOE team wide defensive buff that you can get into play quickly. That will mean that you won't take a bunch of damage. There's very few ways to prevent the opponents from getting on top of you. Um, there's very few control things in the game. One of the reasons why you take summons in this game isn't actually for what summons do, but because they provide area of effect control, and they're one of the few preemptive area of effect things in the game. So yeah, you throw husks down, not necessarily for tanking, but for the fact that they prevent enemies from moving past them. Is what you typically use a lot of these things for. And so that the kind of card quality burst conundrum means that it's very difficult to enter a late game stage and be able to get your scaling off, to get your effective scaling off of your first turn, because the cards don't get better past uncommon quality. If you look at the cards, and we'll just hop in real quick. If you look at the crafting menu, right, like most of the time, the rare Longshot's a good burst card. The rare quality cards aren't significantly, if sometimes any, better than the cards you find on the uncommons. Very often they're repeats, or there are things that do like situational effects, or they're often actually more situational. They're not just like baseline better. And so it's you're as you progress in the game and get new and more items, a lot of what you're doing and how you're scaling is more defined by your build and how tuned your build is, not just based on card quality. And that's really difficult, and that's going to get really difficult because the fine-tuning of your builds doesn't also necessarily guarantee you scale, as we're going to see soon enough. So right now there's pretty much almost nothing. There's like very few single cards that are like, this is going to get me out of a situation. This is going to let me really turn fights that I probably wouldn't be able to otherwise. The only two cards that I can really think of are actually the Astral Conduit, which is stupidly expensive, and you're not going to want to invest 2 logs and 2 metals into this, because Focus Beam can let you take care of situations very quickly. Um, and actually, an item I've been using more and more is actually Crush, because it shows up on a lot of stuff, and 2 metal is not. And with the Armor Smith, you can make this cheaply. And there's also an event that gives you a Mithril Axe. Um, these are the only 2 cards that really fundamentally change how you play in terms of playing around them to get them off. Other ones kind of make your deck kind of run more smoothly. It's like putting better oil in an engine or something. But these are like the ones that like you pick these up and it's like, okay, I'm going to look for a big Crush turn. Like I'm going to try to one-shot this elite with Crush because otherwise I'm not going to be able to win this run because I'm just low rolling everything. Um, most heroics in the game, I'm not playing around the heroics. The heroics are being forced to play around me. And that's really hard. That's really hard to manage when you're trying to scale up your deck into the mid to late game. Right? Like early game you can pick up specific uncommons to try to deal with certain scenarios and make you strong enough. But come mid to late game, you can't do that with specific cards. They just don't exist. Like there's times in the game where I'm sitting down and I have a bunch of crafting materials, but they're just not quite enough to get my perfect build. I'm like, okay, what can help me survive through the next step? I might be able to find stuff later, and I look at the entire crafting table with tons of resources, and I'm like, there's just nothing on here. It's like there's just nothing. It's kind of weird and offsetting that like I can't look and be like, oh, let's try this, right? Like because I mean, there's a few occasions where I tried to do it. Like one time I tried to build a barbaric blow against the necromancer because I didn't have AoE. But it's like, yeah, there's just the high tier cards right now, like the cards that you spend resources to specifically get, just aren't game defining enough to actually justify you dumping a bunch of resources into them. Um, yeah, like I think Catalyst, Crush, and I mean, if I ever got such a glut of stuff that I could get a focus beam, but honestly, if I have 2 metal and 2 wood and 2 mithril, I'm probably building my build. I'm not trying to save my run. I might buy an astral conduit if I find one in the wild, but yeah, it's yeah the improving your card quality to scale your deck just doesn't really work right now. Because there's just not the cards out there to support that. There's not fast, singular, powerful cards in rotations. And in fact, a lot of them, like some of the few that were out there, like execute to an extent, like were shifted off of rares into epics. Yeah. Stuff like, I mean, Life Siphon wasn't fast, but it was AoE, which is kind of fast. So it's like shifted off of stuff. I'm happy that Fireball wasn't shifted off because Fireball is one of the few things that we can pick up that's not a heroic that actually has decent speed in terms of like impact on the fight. Even though heroics don't have much speed at all right now. So yeah, it's right now you can't really rely on card quality to let you deal with later game stuff. And another thing to note is that like against bosses, like heroics and burst don't cut the mustard either because the bosses have too much HP, too much HP to burst. And obviously you can't kill off parts of a boss to make them weaker right now. So yeah, there's you're very limited, and in the few ways that you can get fast cards, because it is so limited, it's often unreliable. It makes fighting late game fights very difficult because you're very often trying to high roll, grab your Fireball plus an evocation, or your Earth grab plus evocation, or like high roll focus beam where you're crush against like a double elite fight where you have to kill one quickly. Um, it's not something you can do super consistently. Um, so yeah, that's yeah one. So yeah, my kind of main recommendation for card qualities. I like the idea of having heroics in the game. I think the heroic construct's a really good idea. Um, Making them both difficult to get with only purples and have them only cast once. I think it serves a good purpose. It keeps the bounded accuracy on everything well. Um, but they just need to be like on their own high impact cards, like heroics on their own need to be high impact cards because on like if you happen to run into a certain heroic, right, it's okay if they're just kind of like nice things. But if like often you have to invest a lot to get heroics, or you have to go out of your way or take risks, and like if I kill a Fury's encounter and I get a Dwarven Helm, I'm gonna be upset, right? Like this card does not change how I play the game, right? Dig deep, like it's a fine card, but it's like I'm not gonna pick up a Dwarven Helm and be like, yes, I actually have a chance now, or like, okay, I have a Dwarven Helm, I can do this. It's like no, like I pick up a Dwarven Helm, I hone off aggression because movement based stuff isn't viable, and then I'm happy when I get like an extra willpower against the boss. Like it's like I get some extra armor and I get an extra willpower. It's not worth, and that's the case with a lot of the heroics right now. Like I've what's this new one? The shared strength. Like sure, getting some cards on your character that's supporty is fine, but you're gonna just convert that to willpower. So this is like one turn get 2 willpower. Like it's not going to like save me the run, or it's not going to give me something to play around. It doesn't have the raw oomph to like chew on. Um, so yeah, I like you've done a good job of creating a type of card in the heroic that is like a limited expression card, right? You have like unlimited expression, which is like things you can play over and over and do consistently, and then there's things that like you can't do, like you have a limited amount. You've done a good job of creating a card type that defines that, but the raw power level behind it is just not there, right? Like channeling, right? Channeling is like if I build an epic style, like channeling, it's fine, it's chill. It gives you an extra couple willpower in a turn where you can play like maybe one extra card. But like if I have a Heavenly Conductor, uh yeah. If I have a Heavenly Conductor, right? I want a lightning storm. I want a forked lightning. I want something that blows up the enemy team because if I'm putting in resources to build a Heavenly Conductor, I need it to do something like blow up the enemy team, right? Like it's, and right now, it gives me 3 extra willpower, one of which I'm throwing out because I spent all my cards to cast channeling. So, like, yeah, it's gives me 2 extra willpower. It doesn't blow up the enemy team, right? It not only doesn't blow up the enemy team, right, but it takes away the opportunity of cost of me taking in a fireball that can kind of blow up the enemy team. And so it's yeah, card quality and the speed of heroics right now is just not up there. Yeah, it just doesn't work out. So yeah, I yeah. So yeah, I'd having played around with heroics and playing in the new game, the new style things. Like I think like stuff like I mean, Heartseeker is just bad, even if it's not a heroic. But it's like like they have to be good by themselves and then fantastic if you play around them, because you have like on a strategic level you have to invest a lot of resources to get these, right? Like you have to invest 295 gold or a rare's worth of stuff plus 2 mithril, and you're only getting 4 mithril in a run if you're lucky. Sometimes you don't even get like you're getting somewhere between 1 to 4 mithril in a run. And so yeah, it's like there's got to be something to chew on here if you're going to be, yeah. Heartseeker should probably cost 1. Yeah, if Heartseeker cost 1, I'd play it. Actually, if Heartseeker cost 1, it would be. I think you're actually right. Like you're you're not wrong. Like I don't know. I prefer Heartseeker to cost 3 and deal 10 damage. Like actually. Like and then inflict double if it's exposed. I think that would be reasonable. That or maybe 9. 9 would probably be. I mean, I prefer 10 for cat 10. 9 would be fine on cat 8. So it's yeah. This yeah, Heartseeker is really bad. Headshot is a better ability. Headshot does what Heartseeker does better for 1 less willpower. Because it does 6 and not 5. So yeah, it's rough. So yeah, again, you have all the stuff in the game to make this happen, but the cards just need to be. I'm not gonna even necessarily say they need to be better, right? They don't need to be better than, right? They don't need to be better than multi-shot, and they don't need to be better than Crush. Well, okay, Crush could be improved a little bit. Crush is conceptually good; it's just unreliable. But like they need to be in the styles of those cards. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, multi-shot's insane, but like we need insane cards, right? Like we need insane cards because the enemy scaling is insane. Yes, chat. Like, it is like we're facing insane situations. We need insane cards, and yeah, and it's fine for multi-shot to be insane, right? Because you have to strategically invest a ton to get it, and then you can only cast it once, right? Like I can't slay a necromancer with 1 multi-shot. It helps, but I can't slay it. And I can't wipe the entire enemy team with 1 multi-shot. You actually probably can't even wipe the entire enemy team with 2 multi-shots because of cover and restrictions with stuff. It is like multi-shot plus 1 ranged thing lets you kill an enemy team and soften up a bunch of other people, which is what you need if you're facing 7 enemies. Another big thing to note is that we've lost a lot of just our generally good burst. Eldritch Blast costing 3 was actually dealing 3 damage is a big deal. We have almost no magic burst right now. And almost none of the range attacks deal more than 3 damage. No, almost none of the ranged attacks deal more than 3 damage, and almost none of the magic attacks deal more than 2. Yeah. So it's yeah. Like we just don't have much. Like Ricochet Shot is actually like surprisingly like like I've come to appreciate having Ricochet shots in my game just because like they actually soften things up. Like it's bizarre like just how little range damage we have, and especially in the magic department there's like nothing. There's just nothing. So yeah, yeah, that's another thing. It's like like I especially like to see stuff like Demon Soul maybe and stuff like that. Like have instead of demonic pact, have like demonic blast, where it's like I deal like 2 damage to myself and 5 to an enemy for 2 willpower, like or something like something fast, right? Like I could we could definitely use that on like I feel like the evil stuff, right? The evil spells are really awkward right now, and I feel like if the skulls and then like the black grimoire like damaged me but allowed me to blow something up like instantly, that would be really cool. Yeah. Uh More magic and ranged burst. Evil cards should deal damage to self, but deal a lot of damage on their own. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of my thought on the card quality right now in the state of heroics. Um. Yeah. Yeah. We it's so there's so many like the early game fights are fun. Like I love playing the early game fights, generally speaking. And the mid game fights are there's like 4 enemies and you have like some burstiness and like there's some like really tense fights. The late game fights are just not enjoyable at all. Like you just skip most of them or accept that you're getting wounds. Like there's nothing tense about them at all. They're just like oh we're gonna get to powers soon enough, but it's just kind of sad right now. Um, yeah, yeah, it's sad. Um, all right. So yeah, card quality is one of the and killing stuff quickly is one of the ways you can scale for fights. Um, the next thing is I lump these all together, but powers and your character's health total. So, um, so I'm gonna spell armor this way to differentiate it from the stackable stuff because I think they spell them differently. Yeah, armor versus defend. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, we'll spell it the English way. So so right now HP doesn't scale all that much, right? So like one way you can avoid dying to 120 damage is obviously to have 120 HP on your team. That currently doesn't happen. Your HP, kind of like your card quality, scales up very quickly early on. Um, well, it scales linearly based on your level, so you get a little bit each level, which you definitely notice, and then you scale up a lot by getting initial armor pieces, and then after that doesn't scale very much anymore. Um, so the thing about HP is that you don't ever get enough to just straight up tank stuff, and kind of going back to the burst thing, um, right now raw HP doesn't convey you very many advantages. And this has a lot to do with how the other scaling goes, particularly powers. So, right now, powers. I like the mechanic of how powers work, of how they get stripped when you take so much damage. But right now, powers get progressively worse as the game progresses, which is kind of counterintuitive because, in theory, powers are your scaling. In fact, you need powers to scale later into the game. But because powers get stripped as you take damage, um, this means that as you go on, fewer and fewer characters can actually equip powers. Right? In the early game, right, if you get prep, if you find like prep in your opening hand preparation, and you get like your adrenalines and your blocks down, like you feel good about that fight, right? You're happy to see your powers. Later in the game, powers are essentially one turn buffs unless you're specifically building your characters to block continually with like abjuration. There's no such thing as a casual power. Like stuff like astral projectiles is such a cool idea, but you can't play astral projectiles in the late game because you just lose it within a turn. Like you're just spending 2 willpower to, like, you're better off moving the character that you wanted to shoot on the turn that you played astral projectiles than actually cast it, because you're not investing cards into your supporty characters that are just buffing your team with astral. You are spending your cards on your other character, on your main core, unless your core is a witch, and I've tried core witch relentlessly. That's something I've been actually really trying to force, and it just doesn't work. You just lose it, right? Because right now the only way you can really defend powers is with abjuration and protector, and both of them have severe limitations. Right, protector forces you to have a character entirely devoted to blocking and hemorrhages you willpower spending stuff on blocking it without actually impacting the fight. And then abjuration works incredibly well, but it oftentimes you're trying to build cheaper stuff, so you don't always get all that much armor from it. And there's also turns where you have to throw out like an extra utility spell or extra utility card from another character, and you end up only getting like 2 armor off abjuration. And like against the dragon fight, like if you're not getting 8 armor, or like if you're not ending your turn with 8 armor, like it can strip you of all of your powers because it just does so much damage. Same with the planar. So yeah, you can't. Powers just get worse as the game goes on. Right? Powers get worse because incoming damage both increases and B is more reliable magic. That's the other thing, is that all bosses, with the exception of all bosses past the first one, with the exception of the worm, deal magic damage, and they deal a lot of it. And so they can always very reliably hit. Like, there's no positional thing you can do or preemptive thing you can do to really mitigate that. You can apply frost and weakened sometimes, but that's the thing I missed. Debuffs. I knew I was missing one down here. But for the most part, especially at higher levels where they get extra damage for free, you just can't do that. So yeah, powers. So we need, like, I'll be frank, it's getting very tiring building protector and abjuration every game, and it sucks to like have builds that are just super bad because you need them, right? Like I can't play Warlord, right? Because like these are cool powers. I don't even think they're overpowered powers, right? Calming presence and courage and team spirit and leadership, like, cool stuff, right? Love it. You can't play them. You never ever can play them because Warlord is a support. You're not playing, most of the time you're not playing cards out of the Warlord's deck. And on top of that, he does not have the block cards to support Protector. So every single power on Warlord is worthless. Absolutely worthless. Like most of the entire Warlord class is absolutely worthless because of how powers interact right now. And so recommendations. Um, so yeah, that's and it's sad. It's I've like at this point I've played pretty much the other five classes pretty exhaustively, but I just I can't like playing the warlord. It's just no fun. It's like playing with like half of a character right now. It's just not tenable. Um, and yeah, stuff like Aura of Pain, like you can't play Aura of Pain as like Aura of Pain would be really cool as a support power because you put Aura of Pain on and then like your debuff characters like do extra damage as they apply debuffs, right? Um, like defensive movement could be interesting, right? Like a lot of the like support alchemists with like calculations um, and plotting could be like there's fun little powers that are like fast, cool stuff that you can play around with. Um, that like you can have them play and then wait for a specific situation, but they can't just because they just get stripped so easily. And then slow powers also are just not good enough, right? Like uh, like acid coating, conceptually very cool, but especially since it decrements itself, like you can't play this because of how mechanics work. Like like demonic pact strips itself. Um, uh, I mean, almost all the powers here, right? Like I'm trying to think. It's just like iron skin doesn't defend itself against magic attacks, and you're typically like waiting with this for like a big block turn to move your character in, and it just doesn't work. Like shield wall doesn't work because it's not fast enough. Yeah, yeah. Acid power shouldn't lose the decrement. Yeah, no, it probably shouldn't. It's, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it should. I don't know. It should have eight durability. I think that's what it should like. I think it should have a deck. Well, actually, if you get eight acid off, it should have eight. Like all the decrement stuff should have eight defense at least. But the bigger power overall is that like I like the idea of powers getting stripped, but I there's currently no way to really defend your power. Like there's so few ways to defend your powers that it really stinks, especially on characters that you'd want to have a casual power on. Um, and so there's a few ways you could try to combat this, um, especially in the later game. Uh, and so the um, recommendation. So there's a few recommendations here. Um, one is make it so that armor, yellow HP, blocks for powers, right? One of the big things right now is that HP doesn't really help you all that much, right? The only way HP really helps you is that you stack HP on your warrior and then you bloody block rangers for your um, characters with powers that you're setting up for. If we made it so that the yellow armor um, blocked for your powers, this would do two things. A, it would um, make it so that your warrior, your guys would scale, and your early powers could survive, especially on casually casted characters. It also make melee cores a bit better, right? One of the big problems with melee cores right now is that they tend to just lose their power super easily because they take extra damage. And if your characters with, like, if your late game character with 10 armor had 10 extra HP worth of stuff before their powers were stripped, it'd make these characters with high HP actually like interesting as tanks and interesting as bearers, and make stuff like your highly defensive builds actually really relevant late game. Um, and so yeah, it also would mean that like if I'm facing the necromancer and I draw evocation, right? Like I can actually put it in play, right? There's actually situations where drawing evocation early in the necromancer fight is actually a bad thing, even though your entire plan is to put evocation in play and keep it in play for the entirety of the fight. Drawing it early can be drawing it on turn one can be bad because it restricts the number of chances for you to draw an AoE card, and you can't play it yet because you need to get your defensive stuff online. And so like if you missequence stuff, you might like you could actually lose the game by drawing your critical power that you need to have in play. And that's just like super frustrating that like small technicalities like that can really really send you for loops right now. Um, and so yeah, if there's some way to code that yellow armor blocks for powers, other some other ideas, yellow. I don't like this one as much, but uh, yellow armor gives you armor at the start of the fight, and armor won't decrement below that amount. And change shield power. Yeah, to balance it. That's it. Armor gives 3 times the amount in starting armor. Stuff like this. Like something at the beginning of the fight to help. Another thing is give certain items just passive armor protection, right? So right now, a big thing right now is that there's not very many passives on items. Right now. Well, okay. So the thing about So a thing about this, right, is that yellow armor enemies don't get yellow armor, right? So only us players get that. That's only a mechanic we have. So yeah, you don't want to give the enemies mechanics, right? This is why we said it this way. And there could be things, right, where it might make bosses interesting if we do this for certain ones. Right, like especially very power heavy bosses, if they have specific yellow armor, right, dealing early damage to them so we can strip their powers. It could add a tactical layer to this too if we wanted to do that. But like, especially for the players, making it so that like we had some way of actually like at the beginning of the game, like there's essentially this HP buffer for players to keep their powers on. Because that's another thing, is right? HP doesn't do so much other than keep your characters alive, right? And a lot of times, like, your characters being alive but losing their powers is equivalent to losing the fight. Which is another reason why, like, I like the idea of yellow HP blocks for powers. Yeah. Create cards that give a buff that protect powers for 3+ turns, right? This is another thing, right? Is that if we had some cards that like made our powers invulnerable for extensive periods of time, or we did something with buffs for our characters, right? It would, right? Like we there needs to be power protection, because I think a lot of the powers are cool, and I also like the idea of powers being conditional, and not necessarily infinitely scaling, right? I feel like there should be investment in protecting powers, but currently our players have no way of investing in power protection, um, or just like yeah, there's no way, right? The whole point of the HP on the powers is so that we essentially kind of have like a timer of sorts on the powers, where they can only be used for a limited amount. And right, another thing you could do is just change the power mechanic entirely to be timed differently and not based on damage. Right, so like it only was in play for X number of turns, or you have like the resourceful mechanic where it decrements, right, or like the acidic coating. Actually, I'm just gonna throw this in there now. Make acidic coating a buff, not a power. I just came up with that. That would be real. That would fix acidic coating so well, right? You give yourself 2 acidic coating buffs, and so like you have like 2 turns or like 3 turns to apply acidic coating. That'd be cool. A 3-turn buff. There we go. We just made acidic coating viable. Powers, but for the cards balance. Yeah. Yeah. I actually we could make this, make more powers into multi-turn buffs. Yeah. Well, the thing is that you can't cast very much on the turn you use it, generally speaking, which is why like 3 turns would be nice. But yeah. You can also catalyst yourself so that you get more acid coating turns. That would be hilarious. Don't use the catalyst to double the acid. Use it to double the turns you can apply acid. That would be goofy. Anyhow, but yeah, like, yeah, it's a bit rough right now, with powers, and yeah, and it makes scaling, like, the fact that powers have anti-scaling, they're it's not like there's already the limit in the game that we can only have 4 powers, right? So characters can only scale so much with powers. But the fact that we actually have anti-scaling in the game with powers is like, it makes it so hard, especially since this is the primary way of scaling with powers. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about powers. Yeah. All right. So yeah, those are the 2 main sources, but we're going to talk about some other stuff too. So summons. So summons fall into kind of so one way you can scale a fight is you can summon a creature, right? And that gives you a creature for the fight. I think the problem with summons is that they die, right? Like they fall into the same exact problem with powers. Is that right? Like they, like, you invest things to get power on the board and to have game effects, but they end up just dying. And so, whereas a husk is really good in the early game because it has all these control properties and it can attack and tank for you and do stuff, in the end game it becomes 2 willpower, gain 6 armor, effectively, is what a husk becomes, because they just die. Solid early, but late game they just become meat bags. aka a husk, is the same as block 6 for 2 willpower. Which is also real, and the reason why summons, this is kind of problematic for summons, is because there's a lot of scaling in the game invested towards summons, right? Like, literally, I'm actually gonna say the entirety of the hunter's kit is devoted towards summons, right? You get 3 summons, but you also get a ton of exposed, which is specifically useful because it interacts well with your summons. You get signal shot. So yeah, you have 3 sources of exposed, but 2 specific sources of exposed. So that's 5 cards to summons. You also have signal shot, which is specifically used to activate your summons for more attacks. So 6 of the 12, it might actually even be more. Literally half of the hunter class is devoted towards summon synergy. And on top of that, there's also a lot of in-play stuff for summon scaling. There's the Dark Vessel, which is entirely devoted towards summon scaling, which is absolutely useless right now. And then the purple trinkets with like Insight, which is supposed to make summons faster and actually relevant, even though it might be bugged or it's kind of bad right now because it currently only when the time I played it, it only gave me 2 activations. It didn't activate all my summons twice. It did inspire them all, but the point is that more summons does not mean you can actually work with them. And they kind of fall into similar problems from before in that you can't get these all in, like, right, you're once you have one summon, you basically have the utility that you're gonna get from, like once you have enough summons in your deck so that you can get the padding utility from the early game, that's basically all you get out of it. You don't get more from having more summon stuff in your game. They're not a reliable way to increase and ramp the power. Honestly, there's not even that many ways to get them into the game, but yeah, like stuff like Dark Vessel is just absolutely useless because they just die. And that's all there is to it. Can you even craft a Dark Vessel? You must be able to craft. It's probably under equipment, right? Potions. It's somewhere in here. You must be able to craft a Dark Vessel. Oh, it's right here. It just looks like the herbs. Yeah, this, like, yeah, summoner concept really cool, but yeah, the missing summon is also a hunter cart. Wait, am I missing a summon? Seems. Yeah, detonate. Yeah, it's also, yeah. I mean, it's good. Yeah, it's too expensive. If you think about, like, I mean, just literally just think about it. Yeah, but literally just think about it in comparison to wide sweep, right? It does the same thing as wide sweep, but you hit your own guys and you lose a summon, right? It's just empirically worse than a wide sweep. So, and you still have to like move something in range and have it survive in range and maneuver it, and it's like, it's yeah, it's terrible. So yeah, I'd like to see summons changed a little bit so that stuff like the hunter builds can work. Yeah. So yeah. So and you can't get them out faster to outpace the damage. Recommendations. Give ways to cheat out summons. Yeah. Give ways to cheat out summons, i.e. Dark Vessel has a summoning card that instantly plays 1 to 2 summons for the cheap. One thing I'd like to recommend is remove the increase in cost for summons and make the Necromancer simply get a -1 benefit for summoning. One thing I've noticed is that there's not many things that summon stuff as is. And there's maybe make it so you can't have duplicates. I was totally broken. I mean, so the thing right now is that it might have been totally broken before, but one thing to note right now is that there's very few totem slots, or talisman slots, right? You have the Elementalist has 1, the Witch has 2, and the Hunter has 1. That's it. And so unless you're bringing the Witch, you literally only have 1, right? The only character that can get more... There's only 2 characters that can get more than 1 item's worth of summons, and that is the Witch and the Hunter, because the Hunter can obviously take them. So, yeah, like that's one of the reasons why you can't even play Dark Vessel, is most characters can't even use Dark Vessel. And so, yeah, like you can't, and the other thing is that, summons don't, the cards don't return to your deck, right? You can only summon as many characters as you have, summon cards in your deck. And so, that's another thing. Maybe make it so, each summon item only has 1 summon. Right. I see. Yeah. Yeah, spam showed the way. Yeah, I could see that. But, yeah, I could definitely see that. But, yeah, right now, it's just not the case. You can't spam summons. You can't, in my opinion, the fights in which, getting a summon out quickly is relevant, you can only ever get out 1 anyway. And the fights where you can get multiple out right now, you win the the fact that it costs more doesn't change the fact that you win the fight or not, right? The fights where having multiple summons are OP, you can do it anyway. And the fights where they aren't, having multiple would be useful but wouldn't be OP, you can't. So, yeah, there's not, I'm in support in, limiting the number of total summons that you can put out, but making it so that you can get them out easier. And maybe Summoner can lift that restriction or something. But... yeah, summons right now are, you can't get them out. There's no scaling. The other thing that would help a lot is give more team wide defense, specifically buff force field. It should be a 1 willpower card. Yeah, there's no real way for you to defense give more summon / team wide defense. Buff force field. Yeah. Either way. Just compare it to Bulwark. Yeah. 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 I mean, it is iffish, right? I'm talking this from the perspective of like Cat 8 and higher. Like, but the thing to understand is, right, like if you're playing at an easier level, you're playing it so that you can like 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 my goal is to make it so that every strat is relevant. And right now, late game summons just aren't relevant, right? It's like I'd love it for you to have summon runs where you just summon 4 things in a fight and you Zerg stuff down if you rolled it. Like if you bring a witch and a warlord on your team and you're showing the way, um, and and doing these crazy team wide buffs and like having the being a better version of the necromancer, sure, that's awesome, right? Like there's like if you invest in that power and you get the cards for it, like it should be powerful. But right now it's not. Right now all the summon cards are just like all of the scaling summon cards, like Insight, Dark Vessel, um, even Last Soul itself, it's just not good. Um, uh, yeah. Um, uh, give away to buff summon HP. There's no. Yeah. That's another thing you can do. You can just give summons more HP. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not just strive for a job. Like, if you roll into this stuff, like building into it is like, like, like you only have so much to work with at high cataclysm, right? Like, like if anything, higher difficulty. I explained this a little bit earlier, but higher difficulty, you should be exploring more because you have fewer options because you have fewer resources available. Right, that's kind of the fun thing about high difficulty, so that it forces you into places that you wouldn't normally go. Um, it's forcing you to take risks that you wouldn't normally do. It's forcing you to try builds and make weird items work. And I'd love. I mean, I tried to make this insight work, right? I tried. I got double summoner's charm, and it's like, okay, let's try to get insight to work, and it just was terrible. It was like I couldn't even get one of these to work, let alone two in an ideal situation. It's just like insight's also a very bad heroic card. Insight should not be heroic. Uh, Insight should just be non-heroic as is, because one of the problems with Insight is that you keep redrawing it, but you have to like specifically sequence things. Like you have to get all of your summons before your Insight, and Insight doesn't instantly win you the game, right? Insight just makes Hus like, honestly, Insight should probably be on Dark Vessel, right? Like yeah, Dark Vessel should have like things that like cheat out and buff minions and make them faster and more interesting, and then like Summoner should be on Summoner's Charm. Um, yeah, that's yeah, that's another recommendation. Make Insight not heroic and put it on Dark Vessel, and put Summoner on Summoner's Charm. Yep, I do that for certain. This also makes it makes it that if you're going for a summoner build, then you have the power on the summoner epic, and then it makes Dark Vessel kind of that fast cheaty thing that you get on your witch or your yeah yeah major I don't know, decrease. I'm just gonna say rework detonate. Detonate. Currently terrible for the player, but nightmarish for the summoner, for the necromancer. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to see summons and the summon stuff made more relevant to scale. Obviously, again, it's okay to have cards that are early game. It's good to have cards that are late game, but if there's a chance for me to get a summoner's charm, the summoner's charm should be relevant, right? Again, if I'm getting a bad epic, it is really, hey, I have to put effort in to get a epic, right? I have to put effort in to get these late game stuff, right? I either have to buy them, I have to make them, or I have to spend an event that can high roll I have to, or I have to risk rolling this, right? And so it's it needs to be worthwhile, or else I'm either going to be forced into getting this because I'm playing hard and I can't explore too much, but yeah. It'd be dope if Detonate worked on other summons too. Other people's summons. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So, yeah. That's... Yeah. So, yeah, that's my recommendation for summons. Legendary passives. So this is something you can scale in game. We're gonna say legendaries need to be reworked to be good. So yeah, so legendaries that are currently relevant, that are currently good. Legendaries need to be good, period. Alright, so legendaries are weird. They're not weird actually, but yeah, every legendary takes investment to get, right? They don't just show up, right? You only get them from I think you get them from quest events, right? You get them from a 3-part quest event typically. Well, most of the elemental sap you don't, but you get them from 3-part quest events, right? You have to get a follower. The follower has to get a quest, and then you have to go somewhere. You have to beat a boss. Those are the 2 ways you get legendaries in this game. You have to go out of your way to get these. And it's not good enough for legendaries to be acceptable in their slots. They have to be better than acceptable, right? They just... It's... I mean, they don't have to be technically, but it's they don't have to be crazy, but they probably should be, because it's just not tenable to win a lot of runs without your legendaries being impactful. Yeah, but even the high roll ones, it's typically like, I don't know. It's like I can't stress it enough. Like currently, there's legendaries that make your deck that make your character worse when you equip it, like just objectively worse. And like for something that you have to invest, right? Like you have to take the opportunity cost of like putting that legendary on your slot and all the strategic stuff to get it. Yeah, like yes, as you're saying, Hanvers, like they should be run defining. Um, they 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 should be stuff like honestly, I don't even think legendaries need to have a downside. Um, like legendaries don't even need to have a downside. Right? It's just like because of how rare they are. Right? Like they just don't like there's like I get passives are strong, but like there's so few passive like there's so few way passive buffs that you can get going into fights that like like yeah. It's like I like double-edged sword stuff. I even like double-edged cards. Um but like it's just the ones that put injuries in your deck are just so hard. Yeah. Yeah. Um right. Um yeah, not being able to hone legendaries. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, able to hone legendaries. Uh, make it difficult even if there isn't much downside to justify the bloat. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah. Even if the downside is manageable. Right? Like this is exactly why Iona's Blade is bad, right? Iona's Blade has wide sweep and fearsome shout on it, and then the debuff, right? Like if Iona's Blade had wide sweep and barbaric blow, the card would be good. Like I could take that to the Necromancer fight and one shot things, but I can't. It just has one wide sweep, and the entire point of Iona's Blade is that you're hopefully taking it to bring the AOE component, um, because it takes a weapon slot, right? I can't. I mean, if I were insane enough to bring, I mean, it wouldn't even make critical strike good. But if I were insane enough to bring critical strikes, right, like I can only bring one because it takes a weapon slot, and so like it's legendaries. Yeah, they need. Um, they can't be honed. Um, yeah, so yeah. Hey Shogun, talking about scaling. We've gotten to legendary passives. uh, I don't know if I even want to make this list right now. I mean, I can try. Do I want to go to a full death talk on legendaries? That's a. I mean, you have bow. So I mean, I can try to remember it by slot. Um, so that bad. So the bow is good. The light armor is good. Passable. Not acceptable. Actively make your deck worse. Situations is just passable because of opportunity cost. Yeah, the bow isn't even always good. Sometimes the opportunity cost is too great for it. So Planner Tome. The glass armor is good. Glass armor. I'm trying to think. The elemental staff. I know I'm missing two of them, but dragon. The dragon shield is just actively bad. Iona's blade is actively bad. The star hammer is laughably bad. I'm trying to think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're way off all of them. It's gonna take a minute. Oh, is there a legendary helmet? I forget. I'll just call it the 2-cost tome because I forget what it is. Dragon Wing bracers are good. Dragon Wing bracers are. I'll say Dragon Wing bracers are good, though often useless. Useless for many characters. Though often not usable for certain characters. Ritual. The burial pendant is good. Yeah, Dragon Ring bracers. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know I've unlocked 19 of 21. So yeah, we got the bracers. I don't think there's a potion. I'm not aware of a legendary potion. Star Hammer we've already correctly categorized. We've already correctly categorized the Elementalist Staff. Oh, Juggernaut. Juggernaut is bad. Juggernaut. Yeah, it's just bad. Like 8 armor is not enough to justify 2 weaknesses. Yeah. 5, 6, 7, 11. Situation should be considered 105 gold. And is currently regarded as 105 gold. just want to clarify that. I feel like there's one that gives you protector that I'm forgetting. There's one that gives you insight that I'm forgetting that was actively bad. Oh, Nebula Star. Uh, Nebula Star, I'll say is pass. I haven't played around with it enough. Nebula Star. Haven't played around enough for play around enough, but the penalty is hard. The penalty and bloat is hard to justify in a lot of situations. Yeah, 1, 2, almost good, but this, but the distribution of things is weird to make work. Is there a legendary crossbow? Flint knife. Oh yes, thank you for the yes. That goes under garbage. Yeah, the flint knife, it has anti synergy with its heroic question mark. It's so funny. It doubles the costs of your abilities, and it has a 2 willpower heroic that costs 4. It's like, how do you play multiple cards on a turn with a 4 cost heroic Surging Strike? It's just so bad. You can't hone the Surging Strike off. It's like. It just bloats your attack for what it makes it so that you can never play the Surging Strike, and then it bloats your deck so you can't find the setups and stabs to actually make it good. It's just that's it's just like, yes, the flint knife. That's AKA 105 gold. It is. This is probably one of the most laughably bad ones. It's like, oh, there's the Elven chain, uh, Elven chain armor. Yeah, I have Burial Pendant. Yeah, Burial Pendant's on there. Yeah. If the curse, if the weakness was just a minor wound, it would be good. Yeah. Oh, is there another one? Ooh. So, yeah, we have Nebulous Star, the glass armor. We have Planar Tome. We have the Flint Dagger. We have the sword. We have the bow. We have the Star Hammer. I forget what Star Hammer does, but I know it's garbage. We have the Elven armor. We have the Ritual Pendant. We have Juggernaut. We don't have... Oh, Omamari robes. That's right. Omamari robes. Not enough powers to justify. I like Omamari robes, don't get me wrong, but there's not enough powers to justify the downside I find. I end up selling it. It's passable though. Thank you. And then I don't know. So we are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you have 15 here. And I have 15. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, you have doubles? Okay. So I think we have all the ones you have. Yeah, you have the Elementalist staff. I've probably seen ones that I've sold and forget because I don't see them often enough. Oh, there's the Soul Gem. Soul Gem. This is the best one by far. It's so sad I have to say that the consumable one is the best one. The one that just lets me get a card that's not relevant to legendaries in general. It's like, yes, I will actually. If I could take a soul gem over a legendary, I would. Every time. Except for maybe the elemental staff on acid builds. But I'd actually consider it. Actually, I think I would take a. If I was playing an elementalist build, I think I'd take the. I may actually take another soul gem for another acid flask. I think in literally every situation, almost every situation, regardless on synergy, I'd actually probably take a soul gem over a legendary right now. I could see bow in some situations. I could see glass armor in some situations, and I could see burial pendant. Those are the three I would take over a soul gem in specific situations. So almost every other one, I'd take a soul gem. That's really sad. That's really sad. I mean, Omamori is good if you have duplicates. Yeah, Omamori is good if you have duplicates of powers, right? It's good for rapid fire and it's good for resourceful. Um, yeah, it's not good if it's not good if you just have four powers that you're just cranking through because it helps you get them out fast, and it does improve that a bit, but it like I've actually found that I've lost I've lost runs to Omamori in boss fights and just in general because you run out of powers. Um, yeah, it only helps you speed up a power deck. It doesn't actually help yeah, the downside is really bad. It's really, really bad. So see, I don't use Warlord. I mean, I think the Warlord is just not playable because of how powers work currently. So, yeah. Um, yeah. So, yeah. You have to invest a lot to get these, and you only get 2, maybe 3 if you can find a quest, not counting soul gem in a run. Uh, sure. This has been changing, by the way. The stats on the bottom don't work, but I am willing to. I intended for this to be shareable, so yeah. I'll actually, can I post this in my stream? I will put this in my. I should put this. I'll put this underneath my stream, but I'll throw it in chat right now. It's not connecting. I have not been connected to chat. Can I reconnect, please? All right, never mind. What we'll do is we'll go echo. We'll echo a ton. One moment. I'll be happy to post this in chat so people can view it. Yeah, yeah. Once I learn that, but careful. Where's my chat? Oh, there's chat. That's not chat. Give me chat. There you go. Have a message chat. All right. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. I'll also be unlike the last sheet, I will be sending this. I will put this in the feedback in the Discord, as well as this video. So, yeah. So yeah, legendaries need to be good. That's all there is to it. Like, yeah, currently good enough to play, not necessarily good enough to justify their investment. I always spell necessarily wrong because I'm scrubby at life. All right. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's legendaries. There's a few more scaling mechanics. Redraw. So redraw. Redraw is kind of important in the game. For making your decks consistent. The fact that you can't redraw multiple times means that redraw has limited use. Oh, that's what we missed. Those are two. The water gem. Water gem is passable. Nice, but pretty underwhelming. And the Blade of Misfortune. Fortune. Honestly, redraw should just be infinite. Honestly, this passive should already be in the game. Alright, there we go. Alright, nice. Okay, we're at 17. Yeah. I like Water Gem, even though it's not good overall. Like, it's it's nice on runs where I'm getting crushed on. Because I could throw this on my guy with 4 weaknesses and be like, you're willpower neutral. You're not carrying, but you're willpower neutral. Thanks. Panic. It's cool mechanic. Would be useful if you could use this multiple times. Could select what you mulligan, or Uh, yeah. And or could select a U mulligan. Um, so the problem with uh um yeah, I should say problematic that you can't use this multiple times and or could select what you do mulligan slash can't reshuffle your discard pile. So one of the big things, so redraw is really cool. I like the fact that some items give you the ability to redraw and scale to make your deck more consistent. One of the big problems with redraw, especially later in the game, I will say deck size, because we should talk about deck size. Uh, slash honing. I Actually, it's kind of good that this isn't just a small category that we're talking about deck construction. So yeah, your deck and your ability to make your deck consistent is another pretty big way that you scale in this game. You start off with not many redraws, um, and then you get to the point where you have a bunch. Unfortunately, redrawing as you get later into the game, you only get so much benefit once you get 2 or 3, I find. And the reason for that is most of your... Well, redrawing gets worse because your decks get larger. Yeah. Since Evocation / Blizzard got nerfed. Like, Evocation Blizzard, yeah, but it got nerfed. And to be quite frank, like, if I'm building an AoE Elementalist to deal with... Like, here's the thing, right? Here's my problem with that argument, too, right? It's like, I'm building AoE Elementalist to deal with AoE problems. If I can't deal with AoE problems, like, that's infuriating. Like... times. Yeah, it's when I say even redraw, I don't mean like you can just redraw. I mean like you can like redraw multiple. Like you basically have the Blade of Misfortune perk, which I don't think is busted. It's like yeah, like it's just I don't know. Maybe it's not so much I have as big a problem as like the big problem I have with the mulliganing is that it doesn't let you combo. And it doesn't let you sequence things. Like, if I draw a fireball and I'm looking for an evocation fireball, like this was kind of what I was talking with before with problems with powers, is that comboing is... I'm going to also throw comboing into... Comboing is near impossible in this game. Because holding onto a card, costs you willpower / armor / or I'll say block for clarity, block / movement per turn, and B lowers your card draw, making comboing harder. Yeah, so I did the math. On average, if you have a 15 card deck and you're trying to get 2 cards in your hand, the probability that happens is extremely small, but B, the average time you have to hold a card to wait to get another one is 2 turns. So any combo you think of, if it's 2 card specific, you have to artificially add, on average, and this is average, you can low roll really hard, you have to add 2 extra willpower to the entire combo on top of delaying it 2 turns. Right? You have to add a 2 turn delay in making it happen, so it's always slow, and you have to tax yourself 2 willpower just for the sake of holding a card to do it. It's really bad. It's near impossible to combo stuff in this game if it doesn't persist across turns, right? It's like you can't like this is why Heartseeker is so bad, because you have to get it on a you have to cast it on the same turn. You have to, unless you have Mark Target. Mark Target's the only thing that applies to Exposed. So unless you have Intensify, or you have to have Intensify, the Bat, or Mark Target to not combo Heartseeker. And until recently, the Bat was pretty bad. Now the Bat's good, but you still don't primarily use the Bat to expose. But yeah, Heartseeker is like you have to add like a artificial like 2 willpower attacks onto Heartseeker to get the combo. Plus, you have to craft your deck with Exposed, and that's true with lots of combos. Like that's true with the Evocation Fireball combo. That's true with Evocation Blizzard. Those are like the only two that are relevant. That's true with all the Critical Strike stuff. That's yeah, especially with the way powers are currently exist. A lot of times, especially in the late game, your powers are considered like 1 turn things. And because it's so hard to combo in this game, like almost all the scaling you get from the game comes from the fact that you're building incremental advantages. And because powers have anti-scaling, you can't build those incremental advantages. So, yeah, that's a really big deal. I think you should just have the Blade of Misfortune passive and then kind of rebalance the game around it, because that way you could actually combo stuff, right? That way, I mean, this would fix some of your heroic problems, like, what is it? Like if redraws allowed you to actually combo like stuff like where is it? It's not a bracer, it's on equipment, right? Where's my equipment? Things like Dig Deep. No, is it the potion? Where's the one that lets you get +2 and Heightened Senses? It'd make Heightened Senses actually a relevant, interesting card. It'd make stuff like Impenetrable Wall actually interesting. Right? This would actually fix... Yeah, here we go. Gem of True Strike, right? Like, I could put Gem of True Strike on my Elementalist and then combo it with Heightened Senses. It'd be cool. You can't combo Heightened Senses now, because you have to draw everything coincidentally. And it's like... Yeah. It's just not... Like, there's no comboing in this game whatsoever. It's just way too... Or if there is comboing, it's really high roll. Like, you can only combo if you have a lot of redundancy, right? Like, you can't combo with heroics because you can't reliably... Like, you only have 1 copy typically in your deck. You can only combo with things that you have lots of redundancy for. It's one of the things that makes playing Elementalist... yeah, it can come back and it can recur, but it's still, like, it's not fast. Like, I can't combo it turn 1. And, like, I can't combo it It's actually a great example. It's actually a fantastic example, right? Because I can't hold on to cards that I'm mulliganing, right? Like if I draw it early, sure I can shove that into the back of my deck. But if I draw the other piece, right, I still have to work my way down. Um, so yeah, like you can never do it on turn one, and it's still like the inverse. Like it's the fact that it reshuffles like eliminates it in half the cases, but that does it like the half cases that you gain where it's workable, you kind of lose in the sense that you lose in the other sense that like you have it's like having more of them in your deck, but you can't have more of them in your deck because they're heroic and you can't duplicate them and you can't do stuff with them. Good turn one win fight. Like I it I don't know if it would trivialize fights. It would definitely like even right now evocation plus fireball doesn't one shot everything. It would definitely help, but like I don't know. It's like I think we should have either infinite rerolls on a turn, or we should be able to choose what we mulligan. Either or, right? Like I don't think, right? I don't think we should have both because I think if we had both, you're right, it would trivialize. But right now, the probability that you draw evocation and your fireball in the same hand is very low. Um, or you draw even like evocation plus one AoE is very low, just in a natural hand, right? So it's yeah. I yeah, I don't know which ones the dev would like. I don't know which ones would make sense, but right now it's like yeah. The redrawing mechanic is like bizarre. Um it's yeah, it's good, but it's not. It doesn't solve problems. It doesn't solve a lot of the problems that you have with deck size, instruction, honing. Also, honing is insanely good right now. It should not be on a follower. Or yeah, so pretty much you don't have to have honing to win a game, but honing helps a lot. I always take honing now when I see it. I actively search out honing. You can get it reliably, but I think like I don't like the fact that the game is kind of balanced right now around the fact that you're getting honing. Like card be on just a follower. It should be something you can do for resources. I don't think it should be unlimited throughout, i.e. like at a shop. Or for events. Right? I think honing should be something that like I think having the traveling honing could be like I think the honing is just like having it only on a follow like I think honing should be in the game, but I think having it only on the follower makes it like kind of high rolly and like kind of dependent. And there's times where I think it'd be interesting if it was like, oh, I'm not going to choose the follower because I want this temporary amount of cash because I'm kind of desperate in the early game and I'll spend stuff later to hone. and I'm not going to need to hone all that much, so I don't need this at every rest site, right? That'd be interesting. But right now, um, is I'm not going to say insanely good, insanely important to good runs. Or you should make items just more internally synergistic and remove it, which I don't like as much. I prefer the first option. Yeah. So yeah, it's if you don't get honing, yeah, like so resources in the later game are cash in the later game is it's not always plentiful, but it's often plentiful, right? If you have a cash high run where but early game you have low power, I mean it's or you know that you're not going to need that much honing. Like there's some decks you don't need much honing, right? Right, chat. Like there's some decks where like you need to hone off like everything, like every item needs to be honed in your deck because you have like you got the Arcanist and you're going fireball stuff and you need to remove every flame fan from your deck, right? Like when you have to remove 3 flame fans from your deck, yeah, you need honing. But like when you only need to remove like one thing off your main core and then you need to like when you're playing items like what is it? Like stuff like fast quiver, right? When you get fast quivers, like you don't need like when you have like a fast quiver and like 2 hybrid horns and 2 quick slings. Like say you're going a single target rat build, right? You don't need honing typically. That you just need to hone well, you do need to hone the deck down, but you typically just need to hone either force field off that, or you need to hone armored advance or prepare, right? You need to hone your armor, and you don't really need to hone anything else. Maybe if you have flawless stimulant, you hone off rage. But like other decks require a lot more, and so you can make that judgment call when you run into the event. But all purples need honing. Yeah, that's yes. Most purples need honing. One of the nice things about heroics is they hone themselves now, so it's like that's if there's one thing that the heroic updated buffed, it reduced the amount of honing you need to do on your purples, which is sad, but it's true. Like it's yeah. I don't know. Hybrid Horn you don't need to hone. Hybrid Horn has good stuff. The 2 non-heroic cards are good. Same with Dwarven Lantern. Living Chain needs to be honed. A lot of need honed. The helmets you need to hone. The helmets I wish you could just hone the entire helmets. Actually. Yeah. So yeah, that's that. It's just not yeah. And then last is debuffs. So if you haven't figured out yet, all the scaling has problems in this game, right? The card quality doesn't scale after a certain point. Your powers have anti-scaling. Summons stop scaling at a certain point. Your legendaries don't help you. The redraw mechanic stops helping at a certain point, and honing is inconsistent. Debuffs. So if you're looking at a fight and you want to ask yourself, how do I do? I did not mean to do that. How do I go from doing 10 damage a turn to 20? Debuffs are actually one of the only reliable ways you can start doing that. These work. Kind of. Things that debuff for more than one turn are very relevant. Everything else isn't. Alright, so everything that debuffs for more than one turn are strong. Alright. Which is why slow burn is great. It's kind of why intensify is good. It's I don't think mark target's good, but I think it's actually sometimes kind of playable ish. I say that hesitantly. The problem with debuffs, everything else isn't, because you can't take advantage of one turn debuffs. So a 2-turn debuff is actually typically like 3 times as good as a 1-turn debuff. And a great example of this is Shocked. Okay, if I spend, say I spend a turn, right? I have this 4-card Lightning Bolt, right? Excellent example is Lightning Bolt, right? I have a 4-card Lightning Bolt or a 3-called Lightning, right? I move into position and I shoot my Lightning Bolt out. I spend 5 cards shooting my Lightning Bolt out. I now have 4 cards to play with to take advantage of Shocked. If Lightning Bolt inflicts Shocked 2, I'd have 13 cards to play with to inflict Shocked. And this is true with the majority of debuffs, right? You immobilize your opponent for 3 or 4 willpower. You have the remainder of the turn to play with that. If you mobilize them for twice that, you can play around them with 13 cards worth of stuff. Same goes with Exposed. Same goes with anything that you end up having to play around. Pretty much the only buffs that aren't innately better by the fact that don't get extra scaling per 1 extra turn is acid scales, but it scales better than that, right? Acid scales differently. Burning doesn't scale better, frost doesn't scale better, and weaken. All right, all the defensive ones where you apply a debuff and then it's to have impact on the opponent's turn aren't better. So yeah, and regroup is another factor, right? Bosses with regroup make your debuffs a lot worse. So the other thing worth noting, things that debuff for more than 1 turn are very relevant. Things that debuff for more than 1 turn or have multiple ways of applying debuff cheaply and consistently. Right. So, right, if you want to do something with, right, so if I want to do something with Exposed, that's extremely hard to do in this game, right? It's very hard to inflict a lot of Exposed and reliably apply it. It's hard to play around Shocked. Now, Shocked is better right now, right? Like, I like the new Shock change. But still, like, I'm not... Like, Shocked typically only equates to 1 or 2 damage, right? It's not like I can make a Shocked build, right? And then just, like, lay waste. Right? You can do that with the Elementalist, but, like, it's melee-based, so you can't pre-apply it and then do stuff with it, right? So... yeah, you can't, other than Burning and Acid, right, there's no real debuffs, and Burning doesn't scale, so, like, other than Acid, there's no debuffs that, like, you can really reliably scale with. Immobilize is necessary for some fights, and, yeah, Immobilize is just straight up necessary. But yeah, like exposed and lightning or shocked, um, it just even frost to an extent, right? You can't reliably use these as ways of like mitigating enemy damage or like just dealing with them. Unless you have like ways to apply multiple stacks. Um, and the more, the significantly better, right? So like marked target should probably apply 3 exposed. Most of the single target debuffs should apply 2 or 3 in this game. There's not really, yeah, most of the, like all the exposed and lightning should probably apply, at least the big lightning spells, right? Like, well, there's only one big lightning spell right now, but like lightning bolt should apply 2 lightning, marked target should apply 3 exposed. Um, the shout should apply 2 exposed. Um, so yeah, but yeah, in general, debuffs work, but they're also very slow, and that's the other big thing about them. They are also very slow and often only work on bosses. Yeah. And this is the other problem, is that debuff builds, while they do deal with bosses and do actually scale, they are very slow to get out. And they require you to completely support your build with other cards. And it's very hard to go, right? It's very hard to go a pure acid and also get everything else you need to win the run. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Furies need to be nerfed, right? Like the Furies are the the Furies. The Fury encounters should be changed to have like 1 or 2 Furies with like, yeah, like. But here's the thing, right? It's like the Rattling Sorcerer, like the shocked part only comes into play like a little bit, right? It's not actually scary, right? It's like the on hit debuffs aren't, like exposed is not a very scary effect. Like if someone hits me with the what is it? Right? Like when like the where's the dagger? Where's the silly dagger that inflicts exposed? Get over it. Setup, right? Setup is only scary when I'm getting comboed with tons and tons of attacks. It's not actually a scary condition. So, yeah. Like, I don't know. I'd rather the lightning bolts be actually scary than like, and then like you can nerf the bosses accordingly than like them not be relevant. So, yeah. Like, I'm fine with bosses being hard and having scary stuff. Like, I am super like I want bosses to have scary stuff. I want to be playing around lightning. Right? I want, if a boss has a lightning spell, for me to be playing around the lightning spell. I don't want to be playing around some arbitrarily high difficulty thing. I want to be playing around the tactical thing they're doing, right? Like, right now, like the way you play around Rattling Sorcerer is that it has a blob of HP. You don't play around it thinking that lightning is going to be a factor, and that's kind of disappointing. So, yeah, I want lightning. I want to get hurt by lightning. When I face a enemy with lightning, I want to be like, this person has lightning. I should be scared of that, and I should also be confident in the fact that it doesn't have other stuff like a massive blob of HP and other problematic assortments. Nerf boss HP, please. It'd make the game so much better. Trust me. Just uh yeah. Nerf boss HP. You have a finite expression game. Make it so that bursts can actually be used and be relevant against bosses. Yeah. So, and also nerf Furies. Give them the green. Make it so that the Furies encounters have like a normal amount of, like, give them a few of the green flappy things instead of having 4 elites. Do you know how hard 4 elites is on Cat 10? Like, I think you just instantly die if you face Furies on Cat 10. Like, I have no idea how you even. They all do an extra damage. Like, what the heck? Like, I beat them on Cat 9 barely with like 2 wounds, and I had like the perfect composition to deal with them. Like, they're just, why are those in the game in the numbers that they're at? Like, they don't need to be in the game. What point? Their current quad, like, you can't go to ruins in the 3rd act of any run because of Furies. Yeah. But yeah. Statuses or debuffs. Yeah, recommendations. Rework only damage debuffs, chilled and weakened and immobilize, are good for a single turn. Rework exposed cards and lightning cards to apply 2 or 3 particularly exposed. Rework Hex and Aura of Pain to apply or retain debuffs. So here's some recommendations, right? Hex. Apply Hex. Castable power like Burden. On cast, apply a random debuff. Debuffs on this target don't decrement at the beginning of at the end of a turn. Aura of Pain. Instead of dealing more damage, instead of taking more damage per debuff, enemies within Aura don't decrement at the end of a turn. Yeah. So, yeah. Add decrement. Add anti-decrement stuff. Right. As a note, yeah, please don't give positive buffs. I think, honestly, guys, I think this is already in the works, because I don't know if you saw my posts and war stories, but they're adding stealth to the game. And stealth, like, if stealth is something that you can apply on Hex and Aura of Pain, the cards are 100% unusable. 1000,000,000%, because stealth is like the most powerful buff in the game. Like being on for those of you who don't know, stealth, when I encountered it, it makes you untargetable. So like like people can't do anything that targets your square. And if that also works how I believe it works, it also means that they can't AoE hit you, um, with you just in the radius, because AoE can only be cast when there's a target available. So, um, yeah. So yeah, that needs to happen. But yeah, yeah. As a note, immobilize should probably be changed to reduce movement and reduce movement to 1 and prevent flight. So as yeah, I throw this in here because currently it is the all or nothing thing that determines if the worm or dragon is beatable. Yeah. Yeah, so this is a yeah, this movement to 1, yeah. Yeah. And Razorback, thank you. Or Razorback, yes. Worm, dragon, yeah. Yes. Or Razorback is beatable. Yes, good call. Thank you, chat. AoE still works with stealth? We'll see. It'll be interesting. But yeah, yeah, this currently makes another note. Oh yeah, it would be cool though if chilled did reduce this to 0 after. Yeah, this way there is in theory a way to get a permanent lockdown. Yeah, maybe even add an entomb spell that did this. Smiley face. Yeah, that way there is in theory a way to get a permanent lockdown if you really want to need it, right? Like if you have a frost immobilized build, you could still technically cheese the Razorback, but it makes it a lot harder. So yeah, so that's skill. So yeah, yeah, I did this because like scaling's a problem in this game. It's a big problem. Almost all the methods of scaling this game kind of have like something that completely hamstrings it after like the first act, and yeah, it's that's oof, and yeah, it's basically yeah, basically as is. Act 1 is fun in most runs. Act 2 gets a little crazy towards the end, and Act 3 and Act 4 on God Hunter basically doesn't exist because you have to avoid every fight. And this is one of the things that makes bosses like really hard. Like I don't like I think Cat 10 bosses are really hard. I think Cat 8 bosses are definitely hard with the extra card draw, but I think they're doable. But the real thing that makes the bosses harder than they should be is that you can't build you can't build you can't change your builds, right? Like I can't uh if you have a perfect elementalist, you can Capacitant. My thing is, and this is what I find, and this kind of has to deal with the redraw mechanic, is that you can't always consistently AoE blow stuff up. So I find that, yes, I can take certain fights, and some fights go really smoothly, but every time I run into a fight at High Cataclysm, I roll the dice on the fact that I'm going to instantly lose because I don't draw Evocation Fireball. And so I avoid them at all costs. Like, basically, like, you're guaranteed to lose HP, right? Like, you can win some of them, right? But you can't take them, right? I can't go ahead and yeah. You only need to draw Earth Grab. Earth Grab can work, but right, like if like here's the thing, right? Like if I roll 7 charred archers, which I do frequently afterwards, right? Like the 7 charred archer event is not uncommon, right? If you Earth Grab 4 of them, which is a good grab, right? Like you're still taking 7 arrows worth of stuff, or at the very least 3. But then you still have to like you're still taking 3 archer shots like every turn from there. Like you're always taking damage at High Cataclysm on any fight, right? Like when I say I can beat a Fury fight, I don't mean that like I can win a Fury fight with like a few minor scratches. I mean I win the Fury fight and I get 2 wounds. Okay, like when I say I can beat a 7 charred archer fight, I don't mean that I can beat it. I mean I can kill it and walk away with a wound. Right? I'm not winning it with no HP loss. I'm not winning it on a sustainable rate. So, yeah, like in every act you get it. I mean, you don't get the 7. You don't get the 7 charred archers, and you don't get furies in Act 1 and 2, right? You get those in Act 3 and 4, and right, like even then, right? Like when you get to six harpies or the 6 green pterodactyl things, like you're taking damage and taking wounds on those fights, right? Like when you hit like 5 rattling bowmen, you're taking a wound or you're taking damage on that fight. When you hit 2 elites, like all the fights scale very well in this game, like all of them. So yeah, like my one example, like you're still guaranteed, but like you're like it goes from like this game goes from like a good fight is one where you take little to no damage, moderate fight you take like 10 across your characters, and a bad fight you take a wound or you die, to a good fight you take 10 to 15 across all of your characters, a normal fight you take wounds and then or die, and then a bad fight you just die, and there's no like that's how this game scales right now. And right, I can roll the dice and make intelligent decisions and like spend my resources so that like I can kind of consistently take fights and move through early and mid game. It's still not perfect. Like you guys have been seeing me, especially on these higher like experimenting in Cat 9 and 10. Like I die constantly in those fights, but like I can at least like try to get level ups and try to get my deck better. Like you can't level like you like if you're like I need 2 level ups on a character after the Necromancer, your run is over. Right? You can't get 2 more level ups after the Necromancer fight. It's just not possible. Like you have to have an insane deck to do that. You have to have an absolutely insane deck. And the truth is, if you have an absolutely insane deck, you probably don't need 2 more level ups. Um, Like you probably don't need to go hunting for gear. It's also sad too because there's a lot of like 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 I don't like how many Furies I encounter, but like the Fury enemy type is cool, and there's a lot of enemy types that I don't run into or I don't get to interact with, or there's like I'd love to take a spike back fight in the third act in a lot of my runs to get strong enough for the dragon, right? Like I'd love to take a 40 HP high damage boss fight to get a legendary roll and an epic again to try to get strong enough to face the dragon. I can't do that. And I can't like and it makes the scaling so wonky and like the ability like because you're basically in God Hunter you once you hit the Lich you have a 3 boss gauntlet, and Water Gem you once you hit the Necromancer you have a 2 boss gauntlet. And it's just like the game does not feel like the game feels like you need some time to pivot with your builds, and you need some time to because it takes time to build up gear and build up your characters. Like it's it's not like and this has stuff to kind of do with like the high power cards and fast cards and card quality, right? That we are talking about at the very very beginning. Um, this game like this game is not a game where you pick up 2 or 3 cards and all of a sudden you can beat a given boss, right? It's not like Slay the Spire, right? Slay the Spire, right? Like if you have like the slime boss, for instance, right? You need like 2 or 3 good cards to deal with it, or like you need 2 or 3 good cards to beat like certain elites, like like you need like with the exception of like the heart, which is the final boss, right? Most of the enemies, like you need like a few specific tech cards to get through, um, or to like make your overall power progression work for a boss. That is not the case in this game, right? What I like what I need is what can beat specific bosses is very unique, and the few things that can beat multiple bosses are pretty much the only things that you can build to win the run, right? Which is why like most runs involve like AoE, immobilize, and infinite scaling, right? And power defense, right? Like you get your goal is to try to get the combination of those four, and you like tune out and ignore everything else in the game, and it gets pretty stale, or it's starting to get stale, personally. And it's like it's and like I love the early game. I love weird runs where like I am able to like try to like piece together some stuff to get through. Like I'm just struggling a lot, and I'm able to piece together stuff to get through like the sorcerer, like to get through like the first boss, um, with like this ragtag set of stuff. I like it when I get like a mark on armor and like a and some like extra movement thing. And I'm like, oh, I can like for this like short period go for this movement build, but like I can't you can't pivot fast enough to deal with the problems in the manner that you want to, and these things aren't strong enough in of themselves to carry you. And so you have this situation where it's like you have a lot of cool things going on, but at the end of the day, if it's not high rolling or specific build, like it doesn't quite like it's almost there on a bunch of metrics, but like all the powers are just a bit are all hamstringed in their own unique way that it just doesn't come together to let you like play them. Like in our design goal here, where there's like most games there are 0 valid strategies to win, even on very hard, right? Like even on Cat 4, right? There's right like our right our difficulty rating right now, like if you think of all the possible runs you can win, like we are well below like I think at Cat 10 it's well below 10% if you played perfectly. I think it's below 10% if you played perfectly. I think Cat 8 is... Well, I mean, I can speak from experience on my Cat 8 runs. I think you could get Cat 8 to be about 20 to 30% win rate right now. Yeah. I've gotten to the... I've played... I'm going to say I've played 20 God Hunter runs in recent history. Well, actually, I can just check my stats. Now, of course, I'd probably reset a bunch of them, but let's check my stats. Let's see what we actually have. No, granted, I'm experimenting a ton, so it's not... These are all Water Gem, right? That's a lot of Cat 10 Water Gem. Where's my God Hunter? So this got to the planar. That got to the planar. That died out. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oh no, that doesn't count. These are God Hunter. It's 17. Oh, that was a Water Gem. That wasn't a God Hunter. Okay. No. Okay. We have about... Yeah, I have about 20% win rate where I got to the planar, and I will say almost all my runs that got to the planar probably could have won. And there's definitely some I could have won with that I misplayed on, and there was definitely... So yeah, I'm about at a 20%, like... If I played just a little bit better, I'd be at about a 20% win rate for Cataclysm 8 on God Hunter. And I think that's about the same for Water Gem. Which is a little low. I'm definitely not playing perfectly. I definitely, like I've only have like I think I'm at 180 hours. I'm probably 195, yeah. And I'm doing this as part-time job, quote-unquote hobby while streaming. Obviously, I'm not getting paid right now, but I'm going to play a lot less once I'm working, but, like, so yeah, we're nowhere near close to, like, a 10,000 hour, like, or, like, a multi-thousand hour proficiency, but, like, I mean, we're at a point where it's, like, it's pretty hard to figure out where to, like, I think if I got better, I could probably push Cat 9 to be around 25-30%. You could probably get 30% at Cat 8. But yeah, it's like that's pretty low. And again, I didn't even win these actually. Maybe it's more like, yeah, I think if like really good players could get this at like I think that at like the highest difficulty should be like 50%, maybe like 40. And right now it's just like you can't find the pieces right now. And it's because things don't scale. Like I can consistently get through the early game. That's not to say I don't die in the early game. I definitely die a fair bit in the early game, but it's like I can get through it. And I can get through it without investing like too much into it. It's just like I can't, like, a lot of the game times there's just like you just don't, like, it feels like you need perfect pieces to get through the late game, and it's just not particularly fun all the time. So that's my take on scaling. Let's do some runs. I promise some runs.